Afar and the Oromo and the so on. So, are we ready to mobilize our people? Are we ready to intervene in such a conflict? Are we ready to support the struggle which is going on in Ethiopia? That is very important. What must be we discuss today and tomorrow. True politicians should.
They have to come back to session in a few days or a week or so, and they will be asked to ratify the state of emergency. I think it would be very useful if they could be, in quotation marks, authorized to refuse the state of emergency. This would be the beginning of a pathway to a solution. And then, after that, there has to be a selection of a new prime minister. This clearly cannot be someone from the original Meles group. It has to be someone from a different group. And I've noticed that the OPDO member of the political ruling coalition has now joined the protest. The OPDO, in my view, has now joined the protest. So it seems to me someone from that party should be made prime minister. And the person I'm looking at is Abiy Ahmed. Seems to me he has a mixed record. He has been very authoritarian, but yet he's been very creative. And I think he could understand that Ethiopia could only go one direction now, and that is toward political reform, toward opening the way toward government by the people, as we say in the American Constitution. So I'm hoping that there will be movement now toward political reform, because the economy is in a very bad situation. There's inflation. There's off-the-record discussions about renewing their normal relationship. I think this would be very important because commerce between the two countries have been shut down, which meant a lot of people have lost their jobs. I think that could be brought back. Also, Ethiopia needs the access to the ocean through Eritrea. They should not rely only on the railway to Djibouti, which I've just read is full of animals barring the way to locomotives, and locomotives running into animals, and that sort of thing. So I think that's a very good development. And thirdly, as you probably know, U.S.-Eritrean relations have been very bad, and we are now normalizing with them. And I noticed that the most recent statement about Ethiopia from the State Department, from Assistant Secretary Yamamoto, who's former ambassador in Ethiopia. His statement was, Ethiopia needs more freedom, not less freedom. And he was talking about the state of emergency. So I think everything is pointing in the direction of political reforms, and I hope the people in power will understand that. So that is my statement to you. In South Africa started to agitate the things, and we just killed a guy. You know, it was a very bad situation. So when they made a decision, the white people made a decision in 1989. They said, we can't continue like this because we are an industrialized country and we want to expand. And unless the majority of the black people are given freedom, we cannot expand our economy, we can't grow. They have to be full participants in the process. So they agreed to release Nelson Mandela, legalize all black political parties, and have a transition to full democracy in 1 year, and then they'll have nothing. And they'll become slaves to the Amhara again. See, he kept talking Amhara, meaning to me that he saw the Amhara as the big dragon, you know. They're the ones who ruled, and we can't let them come back. We can't let them come back. So in order to keep them, we must stay in power. That was my impression. I started to get suspicious And what really destroyed my view was the 1998 war, because Meles saw that he was losing popularity, and he started that war. I can guarantee you that he didn't, it was not Isaias who started that war, it was Meles who started that war. And it was a terrible war, and from that point I said, that's the end. I know that, now I know I was wrong in thinking that he might bring about a democratic system in Ethiopia. So I admit my mistake there. By the way, you must know that the person who created Meles and the TPLF, the military side, was Isaias. Isaias gave them all the arms so that they could win the war. Excuse me. The question of genocide, is this a crime against humanity? I will agree it's a crime against humanity, and certainly it should be looked at by the International Criminal Court. What's the difference between genocide committed by a government and terrorists? Well, terrorists are non-governmental groups that usually have an ideology, and today most of these groups have an Islamic ideology that is designed to impose an Islamic form of government wherever they can conquer. They call it a caliphate. And the US is very concerned about that because one of their pledges is to kill Americans wherever they can find them. So normally American government doesn't like that, so we work against that. So there is a difference in terms of the objectives of terrorists and what governments do. But both commit crimes against humanity. So I would say the International Criminal Court should look at what has been done by the current government in terms of repression and killing people because of their ethnicity, and let them consider it. And maybe they want to indict people. This has been done already in Africa. The former president of Cote d'Ivoire has been indicted. The former vice president of Congo has been indicted for crimes against humanity. So this could also happen later, or maybe even now, by the International Criminal Court. The question of what would I say to Meles Zenawi now if he were alive? I would say, Your Excellency, I'm very disappointed in you. You told me that you wanted to bring all Ethiopians together, and you failed to do it. And now the people that you organized into the government are becoming very corrupt, and they're stealing money from the rest of Ethiopia. So instead of saying, may you rest in peace, I will say, may you rest in pieces. Okay, so now I think the final thing is about what is the U.S. government. It's been a small start, a statement that the people, well, first of all, the statement was that declaration of a state of emergency is bad. We disagree. They said we disagree with it. That was a strong word. And the Ethiopians need more freedom, not less. I've never heard this from the U.S. government. So this is the beginning. So if there's no reform, you're going to see more pressure from the U.S. government. For example, these TPLF guys have become corrupt and are stealing money. We can find that money. Where is it? In which banks is it? We can find it, and we could grab it and freeze it and try to give it back to the Ethiopians. So I think this is the beginning. This is a signal that was sent to the Ethiopian government. Start reforming now, or else we're going to get very tough with you. And I think it's important not to forget that. So it's not a moment now to say U.S. government did bad things in 1991. You can think that if you like. But the main thing now is to say U.S. government put pressure on the regime and keep putting pressure on the regime. Thank you.
number one. Then, do you see stable Ethiopia where the Oromo question is not answered or settled? If you are involved in hammering out a negotiated settlement for Ethiopia for the second round today, what would you differently do to avoid what has been done? What is America doing to help the opposition parties of all ethnic groups to come together and form a strong and reliable and responsible leadership to Ethiopia? Why America gave blind eye for all those years to the atrocity and genocide committed in Ethiopia? What is America trying to do against the danger of Ethiopia from going into ethnic wars or ethnic genocide? Do you still think that the comment, pressure, or any kind of involvement in the affairs of Ethiopia of the US government be allowed by Ethiopians? Why should they trust America after the US support for the regime for the last 27 years? Do you think it is taken as anything genuine? Is it not late? You have been actually advocating for the something of all Ethiopians. You have been, Mr. Cohen, you have been actually advocating for the rights of all Ethiopians. Thank you. Somebody wrote. I'll read to you in Amharic. I hope you understand, no? Okay, I'll translate for you. ኤርትራን ስትገነጥሉት ለአፋርስ ምን አስበዋል? ይህ ከን የምናገር ራስ አባቴ ሁለት ሚስት ነበሩ። አንዱ ቡሬ፣ አንዱ ከቡሬ ወደ ከቡሬ፣ አንዱ ከቡሬ ወደ አሰብ። የወንድሞቼ ኤርትራዊ የኢትዮጵያ ሆነን በጠራተ። So this is I understand it's a question from our brother from Afar region. I understand when Eritrea is separate from Ethiopia. This colleague of ours, participant here, saying that his dad has two wives, had two wives, or has maybe. One is Bure or Burri, I don't know what it is. Bure, okay, one is Bure, the other one went to Asab. So his brothers are, one is Eritrean, one is Ethiopian now. And then during the war, they say we killed each other. So how do you see this separation? That's the separation of family actually, towards because of the conflict. When I was born in Oromia, People's Wales was...
Talk to them. If we did not have diplomatic relations with every corrupt dictator's regime in the world, we'd have to close about 3/4 of our embassies, because there's so many countries in the world that are not democratic. We have relations with undemocratic regimes because we have interests. We need to defend those interests. We need to talk to them about all sorts of things. Can our ships come in? What about trade? What about overflight rights for our aircraft? So we don't, use of the word support doesn't mean we approve. What we do is we deal with them in the best way we can, and that's what we've been doing. We did that with the Mengistu regime, and we did that with the TPLF regime. Doesn't mean support is not a good word, we just deal with them. Now, on the question of separation of families and that sort of thing, I think that's very important. In London, when we had the London conference in 1991, I had Isaias and Meles in the same room with me, all by myself. And I said, and we agreed that there would be a referendum within 3 years from then, so that the people of Eritrea could decide if they wanted to be independent or stay in Ethiopia. I said, it's my estimate that they will choose to be independent. But I'm asking you to promise me today that you will maintain a single economy and that people will be free to move across borders. And they said they would do that. So after Eritrean independence, it was effectively an economic common market. Everything was the same as before, except the political situation. There were separate nations, but people could move as they wanted, they could trade. Ethiopia had the port facilities in Asab, and so the economic common market really continued as if it was still one nation, even though it was separate politically. This started to change when the Eritreans started their own currency, the nakfa, and there was a dispute as to how they would be exchanged with the birr, and that was negative. And then, of course, in 1998, Meles started a war, which changed everything. So I think after normalization within Ethiopia, when you get a regime that's supported by the people, I think it would be necessary to resume the common market between Ethiopia and Eritrea that existed before and was very successful. And if you have that, then the problem of separated families will go away. And I'm optimistic that this will happen. Has the United States helped opposition groups come together? It's very difficult for the United States to operate inside a country. Once we go in, the government say you're interfering in our internal affairs, you're supporting these various opposition groups. It's impossible for us to do that. They will just say, stop doing it, or close your embassy. So that it's a good idea, but we can't do that. Have we been blind to atrocities? No, we've not been blind to atrocities. We've denounced them. We've talked about them. The U.S. Non-governmental organizations have talked about them. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and that sort of thing. So the atrocities have been highly publicized. And the reputation of the Ethiopian government has gone down as a result of that. Can we stop ethnic wars? That's very important, but I think if we have national reconciliation, if every ethnic group feels it has a place within society that's equal to all other ethnic groups, you're not going to have any wars. And that's the object of political reform right now. Can we trust the United States? After all, we've had such good relations with the current regime. I think so, because the history is that we've always supported Ethiopia as an independent state. And I think you can trust the United States. Of course, we're not the only power in the world that might be useful in any reconciliation process. There are other African nations. South Africa, for instance, could be helpful. You also have the African Union, which is becoming more mature now. Let me see, what else do we want? Oh, the Ogaden. I think that's an important issue. The Ogaden was placed at the end of, during the Second World War, after the British forced the Germans to force the Italian government to get rid of its troops, take them out of East Africa, because Italy was one of the Axis powers with Germany during the war. The British liberated Kenya, Tanzania, and that part of Ethiopia that was occupied by the Italians. And so they had to decide what to do with various things, and they made some arbitrary decisions. They placed Eritrea inside Ethiopia, and they placed the Ogaden inside Ethiopia instead of inside Somalia. And for a while, the Ogadenis said, well, all Somalis should be united in one country, right? But since Somalia has gone in such a terrible situation since 1991 as well, the Ogadenis are not so interested now in joining Somalia. The Ogadenis, from what they tell me, and there are lots of them in this country, they tell me that they would like to stay within Ethiopia but have autonomy. Now, that's the whole question that you guys have to decide for yourself. The new Ethiopia should be a highly centralized regime, or should various peoples have autonomous control over their own destiny as part of one nation? My view is Ethiopia is a big country with lots of different people, like South Africa, like the United States. When we made our constitution, we said one nation, but highly decentralized. We have 50 states, and they are very powerful in their own right. And I think this is what the Academies want. They want to be part of Ethiopia, but they want to have a great deal of power within their own state, like the United States and like the regions of South Africa. And in a big country with so many different people, my feeling is federalism is much better than a highly centralized state. And that is my recommendation to the people who are going to bring about reform, is to have a federal system. Don't put in the Constitution everyone has a right to secede. That is stupid. But put in there that everyone will have their own form of government at a state level, or whatever you might call it, a region level. But have a central government to have defense, monetary affairs, economic management, and that sort of thing. And for a country as big as Ethiopia, I think that would be the best formula. And I'm sure the Academies would like that. So I think I'll stop there.
We have seen, I suppose, a pivotal moment in Ethiopia's history. I feel hi everybody, hi, some familiar faces there. I think what has happened has been a long time coming, in a way, with the resignation of the current Prime Minister. Sorry, it is the Prime Minister who's resigned, isn't it? Yeah. But we are at a dangerous moment too. We're at a moment where there is a power vacuum, in a way, and I think that we have to call for calm. We have to call for inclusion. We have to continue to speak up about wrongs that have been done and about the need for justice. And I think that we have to give hope to young people. And it seems to me that over the past few years that I've engaged on issues regarding Ethiopia, it is the young people, the students, the media, the academics, who have been really the target and the victims most of the autocratic regimes. And so I suppose this is their moment, but it is a moment of opportunity, but it is also a moment of immense risk and danger. I'm glad to have had continued relationship with many of you, because I think what this has done is to enable the European Parliament and the Commission to be aware that all has not been well in the country, that there has been a long struggle, particularly for the Oromo, I think. But there is no doubt that the Parliament, that the EU Parliament, where there has been a lot of support for marginalised communities, for indigenous rights, for freedom, for democracy, for inclusion, for women's rights, for fight against corruption, that there has been without doubt a clarity that Ethiopia has not been the best partner and should have been a much better partner. So I don't know what else I can offer than to say, what is really important is people-to-people dialogue. Is peace, is peaceful inclusion. I think that we have to always speak the truth, but we must not ever allow ourselves to resort to violence, even when the forces are against us. Mete out violence. I think it's very important that we remain a peaceful voice. So I don't know if there are particular issues that you wish me to address, or any questions. I can see some sisters there, and I just want to make sure that women and young people are included in your movement, because I'm here today in the UK at a women's conference, and I can tell you that, you know, we haven't got it right hardly anywhere in the world in terms of women inclusion, and we have to be better at that everywhere, right across the world. So it's really great to see my sisters there in the room today. But we have to be much more inclusive.
A massive transfer of wealth upwards. The only fitting descriptions are totalitarian and illiberal. The other main reason that the TPLF regime is using to justify its suffocating rule is that it is developmental, meaning that democracy can wait until the country achieves a certain level of economic development. It is widely believed that the chief architect of this poorly grounded line of argument was the former strongman, Mr. Meles Zenawi. Even though mainstream economics recognizes the need for a strong state in a country with widespread market failure, the leaders of TPLF appear to have intentionally abused the legitimate need for a strong state in Ethiopia in order to run the country as if it was their personal property and impose extractive institutions that have benefited a few at the expense of the majority. I teach development economics, and I am familiar with the literature on economic development. My careful reading of the research on the subject has convinced me that development in its conventional sense presupposes and manifests itself in the form of greater freedom and democracy. And I get paid to persuade bright young minds that societies that produce the greatest material wealth to the largest number of people are those whose individual members enjoy the liberty to pursue their own interests. There is also a well-known positive association between democracy and economic growth and development. But I have yet to see a single compelling empirical evidence that has convinced me that this relationship exists because
ocean while escaping the ruthless human rights violation at home. The level of democratic deficit has also reached a stage which the minimum human democratic rights have fallen under attack. Despite some superficial changes by the system of the country to fulfill citizens, there is no sign of a country on its own anymore. The current ruling leads from coalition of EPR that is facing challenges from with its own coalition, particularly from OPO and ANDM. The people have been anguished and frustrated and continue to express grievances while seeking rights and dignity. Continued recurrent public protests are demanding an end the situation. With this situation at the hand, the forces that are advancing to cause of the people and democratic values also need to act in sense of urgency. In this regard, we need to recognize that our grievances are indeed shared. We are all being killed, imprisoned, exiled, and tortured, and millions evicted from the ancestral land. Our demands are also indeed common. We are demanding dignity, respect of human rights, and end of marginalization and oppression. Thus, our aim also needs to bring us closer and make us stand together towards a shared common ground that will bring lasting solution to the people we struggle for the country of Ethiopia as whole. We have responsibility of changing the current situation for our people, our children, and the entire people of Ethiopia. Alpha Human Rights Organization thus makes our call: let us talk each other, let us discuss and resolve any differences, let us stand, work together. Thank you.
Catastrophe. This is not an isolated case. The TPLF leaders create crisis and profit from human tragedies, both politically and financially. Despite the lies and deceit of the TPLF regime, more people are living in absolute poverty today than ever because of the expropriation of their lands and other economic resources by Tigrayan political and business elites and their local, regional, global collaborators and supporters. The peoples in Ethiopia have rejected the TPLF regime for quite some time, and the only reason the regime is allowed to continue its state terrorism against the people is the failure of political organization to recognize the dangers TPLF presents to all the peoples in Ethiopia and take a collective action to remove it from power. We believe that you are assembled here today at a critical moment in our history to renew your commitment to one another, strengthen the historical ties between our peoples, embrace more political organizations, civic associations, and social institutions. It is expected that you will conclude with a roadmap to materialize the aspirations of our peoples. Global Movement Oromia and its members are ready to lend a helping hand at any time and play a constructive role. To all compatriots taking part in this historic meeting today and also following from afar, to overcome the social, economic, and political crisis imposed on our people by the TPLF-led regime, and for the survival of our Oromia and our people and others, Global Movement Oromia appeals to all leaders, members, and supporters of